Oh, hello, everybody. We are live. We are live. Footballer Nick has already checked up to make sure that I'm doing okay. I appreciate that, Footballer Nick. Just running a little late. So, tonight is our first ever, Sideline fans, first ever fantasy football show. Woohoo! Because if you're watching this, you have a chance to join our football. What's going on? Oh, there we go. Our football, um, our football game, our football league, fantasy football league. So tonight is our first football fantasy football show. So I'm hoping that footballer Nick is all about it tonight. So looking forward to having him on. Maybe we'll get Nathaniel. Hopefully, Nuke will join us and a bunch of other folks. We got Christina, we got footballer Nick. I'm excited about tonight's show. I did some research. I have some tips. Oh no, Nathaniel's here, everyone. So we have Nathaniel, we have footballer Nick, we have Christina, we have the gang. We're ready. We are ready to go tonight. I must say that probably we'll see how long the show goes. Now, if you have any fantasy questions as we go along, please put them in the chat. I'm happy to answer those. Please also hit that like and subscribe button. We're Do we vote? No, we're not voting tonight. I'm just talking about fantasy football, and I'm going to have some tips or recommendations on some players and things to think about, because for whether you play in our league or any other leagues, it's fantasy football time. I know it's a little early, but people think about it almost all year round now. So no time better than now on the picks in the draft. We don't know the picks in the draft. It's totally different. Tonight's show is just going to be about, I have like 21 tips on who to pick and who not to pick and what teams and all of those kinds of things. Chargers roster is my team. Okay. So like for fantasy football, you pick a quarterback or two, you pick a bunch, some 3 or 4 wide receivers, you pick running backs. And so tonight we're just going to go over certain players to avoid, certain players to probably that might be sleepers, as they say in a sleeper, just so you know, is someone who might have been in the league a couple of years, but hasn't really moved up to like star or superstar, but he looks like he's going to move up. So, and then I also have underrated, overrated, all of those kinds of things. Well, yeah, and well, there's always Mahomes' ankle. Yeah, the one injury. Remember, my caveat or my disclaimer on all my fantasy football picks is these players are only good until they get injured. So you can only take my word until hopefully they won't get injured, but we'll go from there. So okay, so let's go with my fantasy football tip number 1 for this upcoming season. Now, this one, as footballer Nick is kind of, I think it's up on the screen, has already alluded to. My first tip is right now, if you look at last year's quarterback numbers, like touchdowns, whether it was passing or rushing. That's what quarterbacks can get touchdowns for passing the ball or rushing. Some keep it and score a touchdown. My one tip on this, I thought this show was supposed to be delayed 10. It's not delayed because I thought I was going to be, but I said maybe 10 to 20 minutes late. So I apologize for that, but we are obviously pretty close to being on time. So anyway, without further ado, my first tip for the fantasy football season, yes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts. My tip is when it comes to quarterbacks, one of the quarterbacks, and I know that you guys already probably have this person on your radar, but would be Patrick Mahomes, because his numbers in 2022, he had 45 touchdowns. And I think most of those were passing. Last year, he had 27 touchdowns. So some people might see that as, oh, he's not a number 1 pick for quarterbacks. He might be top 5, top 10, however they look at it. Okay. And so my first guess is, I know we're the Herbert fan, okay, but would be that look for Mahomes to bounce back. I think he's going to go back closer to 40 touchdowns. He doesn't actually. What's weird about it, if you just sort of follow him in the playoffs, is he scores a lot of rushing touchdowns, but during the season he really doesn't score a lot of rushing touchdowns. They're almost all through the air. So he would be a really, I think, if you can get him as a second or third or fourth or fifth quarterback, he would be a steal. I think he's going to put up, he has the most upside of anyone who wouldn't be the number one quarterback. And oftentimes the number one quarterback is like Josh Allen. They look at his numbers from a year ago, and I don't have those right in front of me and I can look them up, but he put up better numbers last year. So I would just say Mahomes sort of had a down season, but he's going to come back. My next tip is I would stay away from running backs from Dallas, because apparently Dallas is going to go with a running back by committee. When will our draft be? Our draft will probably be within a month or two. I got to set it up and I'll figure that out. But getting back to Dallas running backs, they're going to have a running back by committee. And just so you know, they're not going to feature one back as the number one back. They're going to have, they re-signed Ezekiel Elliott, or he used to play for them. Then he went someplace else. I forget. And now he's back with Dallas. He's their number one guy, but the last couple of years, he's only had a total of 500 yards and things like this. So I would stay away from any running backs on Dallas. Now, I would also monitor that, because maybe by the third week, they might have ironed out who the starting running back is. Okay. Running back by committee means, Christine's asking by committee. What it means is, rather than having a number one running back, they might have 2 or 3 running backs and divvy up how many times they get the ball and they run with it. So it's not just one guy. Say they run the ball 30 times in a game. Rather than their number one back maybe running at 20, 25 times, they might have 3 guys running at 10 times, which means you're not going to get yards rushing and you're not going to get as many touchdowns with those running backs. Okay, so I have a bunch of questions in the chat. Nathaniel, as I said on Tuesday when Nathaniel wasn't around, he loves to keep me on my toes and ask me questions. Who do I think will win Waste Management Classic? I have no idea. I mean, the PGA is it's anybody's week. I think that probably what is it? Scotty Scheffel has been playing the best golf, so he's always up there. But it really depends on today's Thursday. I haven't even looked at the standings today. I've been so busy. I was in meetings all day and I wasn't in the office, so I don't know. But Scheffel's up there. I'm trying to think of who else might be playing hot, but outside of him, there really isn't many people. I mean, you don't hear much from Justin Thomas anymore, or his buddy. Oh God, I can't think of it. He won the Masters a bunch of times. Ricky Fowler. Do I think Ricky Fowler will come back? I don't think Ricky. I think Ricky Fowler and Tiger Woods are both done with golf. I mean, I just don't see them winning anything. I think maybe if Ricky Fowler goes to the senior tour, maybe he can get some wins there. So, but back to football. Okay, now for quarterback. For another quarterback sleeper, and he's not really a sleeper, I would just say I would look for like, if you have to pick a second or third, and Zoe's here. Hello, Zoe. If you have to pick like a second or third quarterback, I think a really good, depending upon how big your league is, if he's still available for a second quarterback, or even a late quarterback if you have a really large league, like 12, 14 teams. I think Jordan Love with Green Bay, I think he's going to put up some really good numbers. He had 36 touchdowns last year, 32 in the air, and he ran for 4, and he only had 11 interceptions. So his numbers are that's a pretty good 11 interceptions, 32 passing touchdowns. That's only like 1/3. I mean, some quarterbacks are almost half interceptions. Have, like if they had 30 touchdowns passing, they might have 15 interceptions. So you want to keep that Yeah, I think he's a steal. I want to have your job. It must be amazing to make golf balls. I don't just make golf balls, Nathaniel. I'm in marketing and communication during the day. I sell golf balls on the side, and that's behind me there. It's rhino305.com. Are the golf balls. If you play golf, it's a really good ball for the weekend warrior or the beginner or the junior player. So, all right. He's a sneaky wide receiver. Well, Jordan Love is a quarterback with Green Bay. I think he would be really good. Okay, the other one I think who's going to have a breakout season, running back, yeah, is Bijan Robinson. It's that one weird card I got. And I know Footballer Nick was here because he said it was like $150. I don't think it was worth $150, but that Bijan Robinson, now that they have Kirk Cousins as their quarterback down in Atlanta, I think he's going to be a bigger option there. And he scores both rushing touchdowns. He's a running back who scores rushing touchdowns and he catches the ball for touchdowns. So you'll be able to get a lot of points from him. And he put up some monster numbers in college. So he's really good in the red zone and around the end zone. So Love did good against the Packers in the playoffs for the Packers. All right. Didn't that card have no, there wasn't a misprint on that card. There was a card that was backwards. Okay. Next, we are all over the place. We were talking about a little golf, we're talking about a little fantasy, but getting back to fantasy, um, I would be careful of Caleb Williams with Chicago. He does run. He'll score some touchdowns probably with his legs, which is good. The reason why I say that is rookie quarterbacks oftentimes have a really hard time. And people will go for the name, they'll draft the name. Oh, Caleb Williams, he was so good at USC. Da, 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 da. I'll draft him. But rookie quarterbacks really have a hard time. Now he would be good as maybe a second quarterback, maybe a third quarterback on your bench. He would be good to just sort of monitor depending upon the size of your league. Again, it's all about the size of your league. Did someone already draft him? Is he a free agent? Can you just sort of watch him for a week or two and see what he does? So I think that that's important. But I think Caleb Williams with Chicago, I would just I wouldn't be so eager to sign him only because rookie quarterbacks, in my estimation, oftentimes, now there's always exceptions, but oftentimes don't put up very good numbers. They usually throw a lot of interceptions. They might be fumbleitis heavy for a while, and those kinds of things. Let me get back to the chat real quick. I see a long question here or something from Nathaniel. Do you think I should be drafting Kyle Pitts? He has not had a steady quarterback for his past few years. Is this his breakout year? And then Nathaniel says, I stay away from rookies. Let me get back to you on Pitts. Is he a running back? He's a running back, right? Let me just see what some of the information I have on him says. Kyle Pitts. Or is he a wide receiver? I think he's a wide receiver, right? Why did I think he was? He's a tight end. Oh, okay. Now, here's the thing about tight ends. Once you get past George Kittle, is that George Kittle? Kittle, Kelsey, and I have information about the tight ends. He's not bad, but he's only going to give you 3 or 4 touchdowns. So it really doesn't matter. I don't know if there is. Here's the thing: you can draft him and see. He's not a bad pick. I would say he's probably in the top 10 for tight ends. So, and Gabriel wants to be in the fantasy football. You can be in fantasy football, Gabriel. That's fine. You're here. Let me mark you down. Okay, we have a bunch of, yeah, Kyle Pitts, tight end. I think that the tight ends, beside Kelsey and Kittle and like Andrews and Laporta, anybody left are all kind of the same guy, but it might be good to pick him if you feel like he finally has a quarterback that's going to throw him the ball. That's all I was going to say about that. So, but I did do some research on the tight ends, and like I said, after like the top 4, the numbers are pretty much even for a lot of the other tight ends. Okay, now just sort of a something to think about when you're drafting. Okay, uh, the number one player probably, in my estimation, should be McCaffrey with the 49ers because he's a running back that puts up big numbers and there's a drop off from McCaffrey. Okay. There's a drop off. Now, Bijan Robinson could sort of equal the numbers or get close to the numbers that McCaffrey puts up. That's why I said he could be a really good pick if you think about it. If you don't get McCaffrey, and maybe Bijan is still around in the second round or late in the first round, it might be good to pick him up because with Kirk Cousins in Atlanta, he's going to run it in for a touchdown and get you those points, and he's going to catch it, and you're going to score those points on a pass play, on passing yardage. But McCaffrey, there's such a fall off. Don't get caught thinking that you have to get running backs right away. And here's my point. I was in a fantasy football league. It was very competitive. And this is a few years ago. And everybody was picking running backs. It was when, so it's a while ago, I guess. It was when running backs were still really hot. Like there was, only one top running back on each team. Now, a lot of them are by committee or there's two or three on each team that get a lot of the ball to carry. But they were picking running back and I had a late first round pick. And so what I did is I jumped up and I don't know, I think so. I think it was when Brady and Manning were still playing, so it's a while ago. Okay, and I was able to get Peyton Manning. I didn't get Brady. Someone already picked him like number 3 or 2 or whatever, or 1 or something. But I was able to get him late in the first round. That's why I'm saying don't get caught. Like if you see the draft going where everyone's picking a running back, maybe it's time to go to a different position and pick up a top player there because McCaffrey is head and shoulders. Bijan Robinson is a little bit of a wild card because you don't know how he's going to perform, with Kirk Cousins. Okay, when do we draft? We will draft. I will let everybody know in a week or two when our draft is. Is there a prize for the fantasy winner? Yes, there's a prize. I'm getting to all the questions. The running back position really dropped. Yes, it has really dropped. I've been playing fantasy football for over 20 years, and the running back position used to be golden. It was premium. I mean, but now after only a few players that are picked, running back is not an important position because of that. Sports card box probably will be the prize for the number one team. That's why you're motivated to win, Nathaniel, to get those cards. That makes sense. It'll be cards. Okay. And then now we have Nathaniel taking us to baseball. I'll answer this, but I'll leave it short because I know there's people coming along here. Do I think the Cardinals will make the playoffs? I think they will now because they're playing such good baseball. I didn't think so at the beginning of the season. I still don't like the manager, but I do think they have a really good shot to make the playoffs because the NL Central is so weak. It's so weak. I mean, they could win the division with like a 500 average. This is a Buffalo Bills hat, correct? And Footballer Nick says the Cardinals will win, and I agree with that. Okay, let's get back to fantasy football. So we talked about McCaffrey and Bijan Robinson, and then there's a whole bunch of running backs that don't make me go gaga. I'm not all that excited. There's a lot that are just sort of the same kind of running back. Okay. Now, a breakout player that I think, or a player I think that could have a breakout season is Kyren Williams with the Rams. Although I can't stand the Rams since they left St. Louis under the conditions that they did. But anyway, I will not show too much emotion about that. They use him in receiving around the end zone. He had 15 touchdowns last season. And you don't have to be, a rocket scientist to figure out what. Do you think CMC will get injured? Oh, McCaffrey, he may, but he's been pretty healthy without it. Wide receiver. What were you saying, footballer Nick? Do you think Lamar Jackson's stock will draft before the draft? Will go up? He'll be traded? I think he might be traded, or traded. I think Lamar Jackson. I mean, I think he's a good player. I think he's a good player. I don't think he's going to have a breakout season or anything. I think you'll expect what he gave you last year. You know, he's been in the league long enough that I don't think there's going to be any surprises from him. I don't think there's much of an upside anymore. You know what his upside is, so that's how I would look at that. Yeah, I don't really think his stock will drop too much, unless for some reason there's some scandal that I forget about, Nathaniel, with him. But I don't think his stock's going to drop too much. And you grew up watching the Rams in L.A. Well, me. Okay, but Kyron Williams, and the reason for him is he had 15 touchdowns last year. They have the same quarterback. And if you figure it out, that's about one touchdown a week. That's 6 points guaranteed every week. Now, he may not put up 100 yards rushing. If he did, that's golden because you get points. What is it? Every 20 yards or 50 yards? It depends on the league. But for like every 20 yards, you get a point. So if he runs 100 yards, you get 5. If he scores a touchdown, that's 6. You get 11 points. That's pretty good. You know, if you can get a quarterback that averages 2 touchdowns a week, and then in your other wide receiver and running back positions that average at least a touchdown or 100 yards, that's somewhere between, from what I remember, depending upon the leagues, 5 to 6 points from every player all the time. Um, those are really good to have. Okay, let's see what Nathaniel says. Whenever you read my comments, you can say them when you are done with your sentence. My question isn't that okay. Well, thank you. I'm not mad that the Rams left. I just wish that their owner, Stan Kroenke, didn't sort of lay a big bag of poopy on St. Louis, saying it was a horrible town when we were willing to build them a new stadium and do whatever he could to keep them. But he was kind of he wasn't a great owner. He let the team get really, really bad. The fans wouldn't show up. He manipulated it. The NFL's recommendation, or their committee's recommendation, were, I think, for the Raiders and Chargers to move, not the Rams. But then he had a closed door meeting with the committee or the commissioner, and then poof, voila, the Rams were going to LA. Well, I knew they were going to LA weeks before that, really. So yeah, he's kind of a jerk. He's kind of a jerk. But hey, they won the Super Bowl. You know, they had a great season back then. Okay. I do think that running back Josh Jacobs could return to form for the Packers. His health is a big issue. Let's see what numbers I have on his notes. He When he was with the Raiders, he had 1,653 rushing yards and 12 touchdowns and 300 yards receiving. So you still get some points when they receive the ball if they're a running back, and vice versa. If they're a wide receiver, well, I guess wide receivers really only, I mean, some leagues give it, I guess, if you rush it, but most wide receivers don't rush the ball. But running backs will run the ball, and some of them even receive touchdowns. I think he could have a good season with the Packers, leaving the Raiders. So I think that, and that's Josh Jacobs, the running back. Okay. Joe Mixon with the Texans, I think, should have a good season. He had 12 touchdowns last year. He had 1,000 yards, and he had 376 receiving yards. So he could put up some really good numbers. You know, you look at that 12 touchdowns and you start doing the math again. Now it's 17 games in the NFL. It's not 18 yet. Um, Dog poop. You're calling, I think footballer Nick Saints. Yeah, somebody's dog poop. I get that. Okay. I went fishing today. I caught some bluegills. Oh, did you keep them, or did you put them back in the water? Or did you catch and release? Stan Kroenke is a jerk. He's crooked. Footballer Nick doesn't like him, and he goes, "I don't disagree, but I agree." So he agrees. I like that. All right, everybody's agreeing with footballer Nick. Anyway, Joe Mixon, I think, could be a good pickup if he's around. He would be a great sort of, depending upon your league, first or second running back. I think he'll put up good numbers. And with those 12 touchdowns, you want to start getting it so that your wide receivers or your running backs average, like I said, either a touchdown or 100 yards or both if you get a real superstar. But you want to get one or the other because you want to get that 5 to 6 points every week. Because if you let's see, you usually have like two quarterbacks, two running backs, maybe three wide receivers, a tight end, two quarterbacks, three wide receivers, two wide. So you have about 9 players on offense, and then you have like a defensive team. And I'll get into that in a second. So if everybody can score, at least 5 points, if 8 of them can score at least 5 points, that's 40 points there. If your quarterback can, it depends on the league. If the quarterback can give you 14, 15 points, you're talking about real numbers in the 60s then. And then maybe you get a good defensive team and they give you 5 to 10 to 15 points. That would be really good as well. So Diggs, Dell, Collins, and don't sleep on Noah Brown. All right. I like that. I like the way you put that, footballer Nick. Okay. What about Aaron Jones? He is now on the Vikings with no good quarterback. Yeah, I would sort of avoid anything with the Vikings until maybe the second or third week to see what they have. Nathaniel did a catch and release. Puka is a big steal. Okay. The other running back too, Raheem Mossert, he had 18 rushing touchdowns and 3 receiving. However, I would somewhat not pick him. Those numbers are bulky. I mean, 21 touchdowns, but apparently Devon, I think it's Achene. He's going to be splitting time in Miami with him. So Raheem Mostert's numbers are going to go down. So he had bulky numbers this past season. I wouldn't necessarily pick him for this upcoming season because of those numbers. All right. Whew. All right. Now let's talk a little bit about wide receivers. I'm trying to do this by position, but I might bring up quarterbacks again. CeeDee Lamb is obviously the best wide receiver. And what's great about it is Dak Prescott, as long as he's healthy, CD's going to get the ball. I mean, that's a no-brainer. Yeah, Mostert was insane. Oh, wait. Mostert. Okay. 63 points in one game, fantasy points. Yeah, I mean, he just put up ridiculous numbers. But again, he's going to be sharing time. So I don't know. Like maybe you take him and you think about putting him on your bench and see how he is, kind of thing. You can do that if by chance, because sometimes you fall in love with a player because they were on one of your fantasy teams and you're like, oh my God, I love this player so much. I know everything about him and I know when to play him and all this kind of good stuff. And you pick him up, maybe you put him on the bench, you see how he does. Maybe his time won't be split. And if his time's not split and he's a monster again, well, then you'll want him on your team. So, okay, we talked about CeeDee Lamb. He's the number one option for Dak. He put up some ridiculous 14 touchdowns. He had 1,700 yards. 1,700 yards means he averaged 100 yards a game. And I think it's every 20 yards usually in leagues. So he was getting you 5 points minimum without the touchdowns. And he almost averaged 1 touchdown. So he was getting you 11 points a game, which is really good. Okay. The only reason Mostert did good last season is because, yeah. Well, yeah. So just all I'm saying is just look for that to happen. I just letting everybody know. So, Mike Evans, wide receiver, should have another good season. I don't think that's anything earth shattering. He had 13 touchdowns last season. I really look for players to have those touchdowns, like 1 touchdown or close to it every week. You figure 17 games, 13 touchdowns. That's almost once a week. So many wide receivers because the NFL is more of a passing league now. They go to multiple receivers. They work in the tight end more. So I actually think that it's harder for a wide receiver, or it seems more uncommon for a wide receiver to get 100 yards than it did 20 years ago because like Manning, I can't think of his name now, but Manning had a wide receiver who put up monster numbers, but he didn't really have a lot of other options. The other options would get 500 yards or 600 yards a year, but not like 12, 13, 14, 1500 like and I can't think of the guy's name. I think he's in the Hall of Fame, but I think he might have gotten into some legal trouble or did something silly. I could be wrong about that. As big wide receiver. Okay, I'm not a fan of the Dolphins. I don't think they are good, but yeah, Tyreek. I mean, Tyreek is Tyreek. I mean, Tyreek. If you can get Tyreek and he's next on the board and he's available, he's next on your chart. I would get him. He puts up monster numbers. He's a great player. Um, I like this point system with the show because now you have a bunch of new viewers. I would like to still watch for nothing. Okay, yeah. Well, we might go back to that. Okay, the Chiefs. Xavier Worthy. He's apparently really, 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 really fast, and he's probably going to be the number one option for Mahomes as a wide receiver. He'll overtake Watson. I forget his first name now, as the number one option for the Chiefs. So you might want to look at Xavier Worthy. Again, going back to my very first tip, if you think about it, I'm saying that Patrick Mahomes will probably bounce back and have close to 40 touchdowns, mostly in the air this year. So he's got to have receivers. There's a couple points here. Travis Kelce only had like 5 or 6 touchdowns during the season. I think that number is going to go back to 10, 12. And I think the receivers' numbers are going to go back up. So I would look for Xavier Worthy to put up some bigger numbers, some big numbers as a number one option. Even Watson might even have better numbers than he did last year, just from touchdowns alone, because I think that Mahomes is going to come back really, really strong. Jahan Dotson, I want to say he's with the Commanders. Yeah, he's with the Commanders. I'm not a huge fan of that name. It just takes me a while to, all my life they were the Redskins. I understand all of that stuff, but just Commanders seems. I wish it would have been the Senators or something, a little cooler. But I understand Commanders. The president's the commander. I get it. Okay, Jahan Dotson. Since he'll have a real quarterback in Jaden Daniels, I think he's sort of a sleeper role this year with the Commanders. So you might want to look for him if he's available, second, third, fourth, fifth round in there, a second or third, maybe wide receiver, someone you can take a chance on that could put up some good numbers for you. Okay, let's go back to some of the questions. Would this number go up because of the Taylor Swift breakup? Did they break up? They didn't break up, right? They haven't broken up, but I mean, I'm assuming eventually they will break up, but they seem to be in love, so good for them. She's a billionaire, he's a millionaire, so their kids don't have to worry about anything, so they'll have a wonderful life. But I'm assuming Taylor Swift has broken up with everybody else. So I'm assuming she'll break up again. Okay. Next question. And I still, the Cleveland Guardians, the Cleveland Indians. I try to get the names right, but anyway, Terry McLaughlin. Are you asking about Terry McLaughlin, footballer Nick? Or are you saying that that's your person? No, they did not break up. They did not break up. McLaren. Okay, are you asking about these people? Will Travis do better without her? I need the news. I think Travis will do good depending upon if Mahomes throws him the ball, 15 times a game. I think that's how everything works with him. While we're at okay, so no, all right. Says footballer Nick. Okay, while we're talking about Jaden Daniels, he could be a sleeper. While at LSU last year, he had 50 touchdowns, 40 passing, 10 rushing. He could put up some really big numbers. He's a rookie, just like Caleb. He's a rookie. However, both of them can score with their feet, so they could put up some numbers. I'm not comfortable with taking an early pick for Caleb or Jaden Daniels, but if either of them are your second or third quarterback, I think that would be okay. If he's your first quarterback, if like Jaden's your first quarterback, like your number one quarterback, if you will, I think you might want to worry a little bit. I just worry about rookie quarterbacks. Now, rookie running backs oftentimes don't have much of a problem. I remember picking up, I'm going back a long time ago, guys, but LaDainian Tomlinson. I remember staying up to 12:01 when the fantasy team put in like all the new players. Okay, staying up to 12:01 to draft him so that no one else in my league could get him. And that year, that was his rookie year. I think he averaged or was close to it, like 2 touchdowns a week. I mean, he was just a monster as a rookie. Like he was unstoppable. He was a lot of fun to watch. He was a great player. So Terry's the number one receiver on Washington. Okay, Terry is okay. Well, I'm saying Dotson could put up some, or well, see, I don't really know. Like right now, I don't know what the depth charts are. I don't have them marked down on my notes. I can come back with some of the, and we can discuss some of this, in a later show when we talk about fantasy. But I think that what I'm saying is Dotson is a sleeper in so much that he didn't put up good numbers, but with a real quarterback, he could put up better numbers. So he could be someone to watch, someone to pick up as like a 3 or 4 wide receiver, something like that. That's what I'm saying. Okay, let's move on. We talked about Jaden Daniels and my fear of rookie quarterbacks, but that he uses his feet and it could be okay. Let me go back to the chat before I move on. Okay. What about Jonathan Taylor? He was the number 1 pick in the fantasy season 2 years ago, then got injured that season. Here's the way I look at it. You know, you have to monitor. I don't have him as in any of my lists as being a leader. I think you still have to monitor some of these guys as far as what they're able to do, how much they're in the offense. I mean, being injured really hurts you, especially if you were a rookie. Or you're young because they don't know where to put you in the offense, and then they need to figure that out. Are you saying Tomlin? Does Tomlin's son play for the Chargers? You mean the coach of Pittsburgh? Is that what you're saying, Nathaniel? I again, I don't have. I did not prepare. My preparation for today's show was tips. I didn't look across the board at every position, every player. So I don't have every player top of mind to be able to discuss them. But for the next show, maybe that's something I'll do. And probably the best thing to do would be, okay, tonight we're going to talk about quarterbacks. And we're just going to go through quarterbacks, and I'll prepare myself for all the quarterbacks, and I'll have 20 to 25 quarterbacks that I'm able to give you tips about or avoid or pick up or look for this or sleeper or, those kinds of things. Oh, LaDainian Tomlinson. Okay. Okay. Yeah, he played for the Chargers 20 years ago. Does he have a son on the team? Maybe he does. I have not. I do not recognize that name. Like I said, my breadth of all the players. I don't have. I don't know 50 players in every position. I probably know the top 10 or the top 15 comfortably. So, this is not a wool shirt. This is actually like a golf wick shirt. All right, let's get to defense because in our league, we're going to pick a defense. Sometimes you have to pick defensive players, but I like picking defensive teams. And when I say that, I mean like you pick like the LA Rams or the Pittsburgh Steelers, and whatever they do on defense, you get those points. If they score a touchdown, they catch an interception, they return a fumble or pick up a fumble, they sack the quarterback. These are all things that you get points for. And I find this to be somewhat easier than dealing with single players. And sometimes what happens is, and you guys probably know this just from watching football, one year a cornerback might have, seriously, might have 20 interceptions, and then the next season they might have like 5. So it's really difficult because what happens is that year that they got 20 interceptions, the quarterback started to realize I can't throw his way, because this guy can intercept the ball. So they go to somebody else, or they were at the right place at the right time, or two of them were off tipped balls from the linemen and they were right there, like when a linebacker. Oftentimes, when I would have to pick a defensive player, I would get a linebacker because linemen might get a sack. A linebacker can get a sack, an interception, fumble recovery, and sometimes score. Cornerbacks and safeties, the secondary, are mostly interceptions. They're not going to usually get a sack. I know sometimes in schemes they send the safety and all that, but most of the time they're not going to get a sack. They're not going to get a great number of sacks. So they're going to get interceptions, maybe a fumble recovery, maybe they score a touchdown, but a linebacker always put up. And the other thing you get points for are tackles, and linebackers tackle short yardage receivers and tackle running backs and quarterbacks. They sack or they'll tackle them if they're trying to run. So there's that. So that's what I look for on that. Okay, tight end Mark Andrews. Yeah, if you don't get Travis Kelce or Taylor Swift's boyfriend. Okay, and then Sam Laporta is a good pick. George Kittle is a good pick. So Kelce, Andrews, Laporta, Kittle, like I said earlier in the show, once you get past them, a lot of the tight ends are about the same. Let's get back to the chat. Nathaniel likes my shirt. Thank you very much. It is comfy. It's a Johnny O shirt, which I love. Johnny O brand. It's the guy with the surfboard. Yeah, the inside scoop on defense is good. On players, I would look for linebackers first, though. If you can't pick a team, pick a linebacker. And then you got to go through who gets tackles, who gets sacks, who gets fumbles, who gets interceptions, because they get so many tackles. Your favorite team are the Eagles. Your favorite team are the Eagles. I think you might have told me that. But how's a New York guy like the Eagles? That's so bizarre to me. So the Cowboys defense would be good because they have Micah Parsons. Yeah, I mean, one player doesn't necessarily make the defense. You got to kind of look at how they are across the board. The Cleveland defense is one that you should strongly consider. I think I have other defenses. Okay, so for the defenses, besides Cleveland, Baltimore's going to be good. Kansas City's going to be good. Dallas is going to be good. And Buffalo's going to be good. Now there could be other good defenses, but Cleveland, Baltimore, Kansas City, Dallas, Buffalo are my top choices. If you have to pick um, Chargers defense, you know what? I did not put them down. They might have a good defense. I did not look at them. What I was doing was I was looking at the stats from last year and which teams were sort of in the top 5 or top 10 for a lot of those stats. Like I wasn't just doing it by I guess I could look at like points they scored, but I didn't have that available. Like points in fantasy, I didn't have that available. So what I was looking at was where they ranked in like interceptions, fumble recoveries, sacks, and those teams. But the Chargers could be there. I do believe that they have a very good defense, and they would be a strong bet. I get the feeling, footballer Nick, are you a Chargers fan, or is it just that coincidence that people in the chat are talking about the Chargers so much? It looks like you like them because you're talking about some of their players. Hey, Jordan Walker's here. Love when Jordan Walker. They got to bring him up soon. He's crushing the ball in the minors. Yeah, okay. You are a Chargers fan. So you're a Boston kid who's a Charger fan. And Nathaniel is a New York kid who's a Philly fan, which never really happens. New York hates Philly and vice versa, which is confusing to me. I mean, it's almost like Boston in New York. I mean, it's pretty darn close, let's be honest. In the National League, it's really close to that. And the Giants and the Eagles, big time rivals. So I'm not understanding that. And I don't know how a Boston kid is a San Diego fan. My only guess would be maybe your dad's from San Diego, or your mom, or your grandpa, or somebody like, or an aunt or an uncle. Hey, Jordan Walker will throw me a ball if I go to his game. That's great. All right. So we talked about defense. I do think the Chargers will have a good defense, but football or Nick, here's the one thing you have to keep in mind. Um, yeah, I think they have a good quarterback. I think some of his numbers slipped last year because I did look at him a little bit. I think he'll be a good quarterback. I think they're a good team. I think they got a little unlucky this year. I think the Chargers will be a good team. The one thing to think about when you're doing fantasy football, okay, or any fantasy, okay, and this is really important. Okay, so footballer Nick is a Chargers fan. And let's say, again, I don't have all the numbers in front of me, but let's say that their defense is good, but that like Baltimore's available. Baltimore's defense is available. Baltimore's defense is like probably number 1 or 2. It's one of the tops in the NFL. Although you may want to pick the Chargers, and maybe you do. Maybe you say, I just want to root for my favorite team. I want them to be my defensive team. Fine, let that go. However, I try to separate my emotions with who I pick and get the best available choice out there. So, like if it were me and I was a Charger fan, but like Baltimore was available, I would pick Baltimore. When I was a Rams fan and the Rams would do well, or maybe they weren't doing well, or maybe their defense was really bad, I wouldn't pick them. I mean, I would root for the Rams. I would, you know, but I wouldn't pick their defense because, unless it was like top 5, depending upon the league, there's no reason to pick them. You want to win, but I do know, I do know fantasy football players that want to pick, like if they're Charger fans, they'll want to pick the quarterback, the wide receiver, the run, like the kicker, all of these things. And just be careful of that. Don't get too emotional. Try to be rational. Okay. Okay. I just said my mom is from Philly. I am forced to be all my family is from there. Okay, so you're forced to be an Eagle fan. Do you root for any New York teams, Nathaniel? What about the bye week, footballer Nick? What are you asking about the bye week? I think it looked like most of the bye weeks were in the middle of the season for every team. So I think that's pretty good. It used to, there was a time that it was really weird. Like there was an odd number of teams, I guess. And some people would have bye weeks like week 3 and others would have it like week, 14. And sometimes it's not fair. And then sometimes it's like when they start playing around the holidays and Saturday games or Thursday on Thanksgiving, and maybe they were off for 2 weeks because of the bye week. It got really weird there for a while, but I think it's back to just sort of everyone has it like week 9 to 13-ish is what I vaguely remember looking at. All right, let's go back to some of the chat before we have the last. Oh, I guess that's it. No. Never mind. Oh, the player I was thinking of actually has a son in the NFL. Marvin Harrison Jr. Plays for Arizona, and he might be. Now, the other thing too is wide receivers as rookies oftentimes don't put up good numbers. They don't know the routes. The quarterback doesn't trust them. They haven't vibed with the quarterback. They don't know the system, all of that kind of stuff. But I think I think because of his college, he's a long shot, but he might be worth picking and putting on your bench to monitor, or if he has a good game and then starting him. Let me get back to let me get back to the chat here, and then you know what? I didn't say anything about kickers. I thought I wrote down kickers. I thought I did. Shoot, because I'm trying to think. Like Zerline kicks a lot of distance, but he doesn't have the most points. I didn't write that. Oh, here's kickers. I'm sorry. Okay, last section, then I'll get to the chat. Kickers. Number 1 kicker by points. Now, this I believe is points, 3 points and 1 point. It's not fantasy points, because remember, in fantasy leagues, I think it's like 4 points for 40 yards plus and 5 points for 50 yards plus, or it might be 4 points for 50 yards plus and then 5 points for 60 yards plus. That's just fantasy though. But the number 1 kicker is Dallas's Brandon Aubrey. Justin Tucker with Baltimore was number 2, and then Jason Myers with Seattle. And sometimes you have to think about it like this. Dallas had a great offensive year last year. Obviously, they didn't do as well in the playoffs as they had liked. They really were a well-rounded team. They really were defensively, offensively. They put up big numbers. They obviously had a lot of points by their kicker, which tells you a couple things. Okay. Now think about this too, is when you're a bad team, you kick more field goals. So there were years that I would want the Rams kicker, which I think towards the end was Zerline, but there was a guy before that I always tried to get, because when the Rams were bad, they wouldn't score touchdowns. They would settle for a field goal, and the guy had a pretty good leg. So like Seattle here, Jason Myers had the third most points in the regular season in kicking, and that's because Seattle wasn't very good. They didn't score a lot of touchdowns. And so there's little things to think about when you pick a kicker. Now, obviously, Dallas was just on paper, they should have probably made the Super Bowl. I mean, they were just such a well-rounded team, but they obviously didn't. So, and then sort of a sleeper pick is Zerline, or Greg Zerline. He was a Ram. They used to call him Greg the Leg, but he makes a lot of 40 and 50 yarders. Jason Myers has a good leg with Seattle. That's why I think he might be worth it to get at number one, because he does a lot of 40 and 50-yard field goals. All right. So my top three kickers would be Brandon Aubrey, Dallas, Justin Tucker, Jason Myers with Seattle, Justin Tucker's with Baltimore. And then as a sleeper, you might want Zerline, only because he kicks things from like 50 yards plus a lot. Okay, let's get back to the chat, and then we'll call it a night, and then we will have a surprise show and Sunday show, and then we'll call it a night. And Nuke never joined us. Okay. All right. And tonight was worth 3 points. So I think Gabriel then has overtaken Nuke in the point total for third place. Okay. Yeah. Nathaniel says your picks can all be emotional. That is what you're saying. Yes, I'm saying that. Footballer Nick's asking about the bye week. And I think you're saying that they have the Chargers week is 5, which is kind of early. Now, what I would say about that is I think for those weeks after week 5, they'll probably be ready to play football, and it'll be a lot of fun, and they'll probably have good games. But towards the end of the season, since a lot of these teams, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but I don't have it in front of me. Next time I'll have all these sheets in front of me and I'll look like a big nerd or something, but or a bigger nerd than I am. But I think a lot of the teams have them like week 10, 11, 9 in there, but maybe I'm wrong. I think week 5 might be early. It might help them have a good record early on, but then they might wear out a little bit. Because every week you're injured. It just you play through the injuries in the NFL. It's one of the reasons why I never like football, because you're always injured, and I don't like having aches and pains. Okay, it's fine being a Philly fan. They win. Okay, yeah, that's true. That's true. You like teams that win. Yes, we all like teams that win. How do you feel about the NFL integrating to different countries for some games? I think it's fine. I think that the NFL really wants a team like in London and maybe some other place in Europe. And there seems to be London fans. I just think for the players, it's ridiculous, because they almost need to have 2 teams in London, and like a team in London and a team someplace else in Europe. Because if you're like, let's say you're Seattle and you have to play these teams. I mean, Seattle, think about it, everybody. Seattle's all the way on the West Coast. They got to go through the US, cross the Atlantic. I mean, they're going to be so off on time. They're going to need 3 to 4 days just to get adjusted to the time, and then they'll need 3 or 4 days back. I don't know. I think the NFL really is pushing this, quite honestly, and I'm not going to say anything that you guys are going to say that like that sounds crazy. I would rather have a team in St. Louis than London, but that's a personal opinion. St. Louis has lost 2 NFL teams, the Rams and the Cardinals, that are the Arizona Cardinals. Yes, we were a city that had football Cardinals and baseball Cardinals. It was kind of trippy when I was a kid because you had to elaborate or specify which Cardinals. But the football team were known as the Big Red, and the Cardinals were the baseball team. That's kind of like if you talk Cardinals, you were under the assumption that it was the baseball team most often. You called the football team almost exclusively the Big Red. Yes, you would pick Harrison Jr. for one of your last picks. I would agree with that. I don't know what to do with that. I don't know if that's real or what that is. Yes, you need to get a team that can go into the red zone, not score, so the kicker can scoop up those points. Yes. Uh, back in the day with fantasy, I used to play every sort of fantasy sport there was, and I would almost always win. I was many years ago. I was very, very, very good in fantasy sports. I don't pay attention to it as much as I used to. And I used to know all of, like, I could do the NBA, I could do the NHL. It didn't matter. I would just look for certain things that I know would be important for fantasy. So, Tom Geiser's 101 tips. Yes, I will. I will think about that book. Yes, Greg the Leg, Cameron Dicker, Dicker the Kicker. Yes, yes, yes. What's the Lester board? Leaderboard. Oh, well, you and Nathaniel are tied with 14, and then now Gabriel has moved ahead of Nuke. Unfortunately, or unless Nuke joined in the no, Nuke's not here tonight. Okay. The leaderboard. So we have a two-way tie, and then we have third place with 8 points. We have Gabriel, and then with 6 points, we have Nuke. All right. Next question. Why are the St. Louis Cardinals starting pitchers like orphans? Because they don't know where their home is. Yeah, that's good. That's good. I like it. I like a little humor. That's good. It breaks things up a little bit. You think the NFL is playing the games in Europe and London for money? I think so too. They're trying to get a fan base there. One of the things that you guys probably, I don't think it was ever around when you were alive. I think it was in the 90s. They used to have NFL Europe. And actually, Kurt Warner, the Rams quarterback who played for the Giants, and then he took the Arizona Cardinals to the Super Bowl as well. He actually played. He played in the AFL, that indoor football league, arena football league. I don't know if that's still around anymore, actually, the AFL. But he played in the arena football league, and then he also played in NFL Europe. And they did have teams like in Frankfurt and London and stuff like that. And it never caught on. I guess it didn't have a very good fan base. So I think the NFL is trying to get more and more people to support the NFL. So, but they do have a history of being in Europe, and that was with NFL Europe or whatever they called it, or Euro. And they had like 2 or 3 different names for it. One of the times was NFL Europe, I believe. That's what I remembered as. What's the difference between the St. Louis Cardinals and a mosquito? A mosquito stops sucking. Ah, boy, that's a good one. That's a good one. I'll be taking off 7 points on Nathaniel now. All right. Those were jokes you found online. Very good. Yeah, we have a long show tonight, and we're always prepared. Okay, so we're gonna have a surprise show, and we're gonna have a Sunday show. So look at the Zoe thought the joke was funny. Look at the community page on the channel to figure out when the surprise show is. Paige Brown is here. Hi, Paige. I think Paige has been here before. Hi, Paige. How are you? The show is actually almost over, so you're catching us at the tail end. But Paige and everybody else who's watching, Nathaniel says, Paige, what's up? Like and subscribe. Paige, subscribe so you can get all of our updates. You've subscribed. Like the video. That would be awesome. And then, like I said, we're going to have a surprise show. And then we're going to have our Sunday night show at 8 o'clock. We're going to try to stay with the 8 o'clock. Paige says, what's up, Nathaniel? And that's it. That's it, guys. This is about an hour. So good job, everybody. Okay, I'll just say this for everyone on. We'll probably have the surprise show tomorrow. I'm not going to have it on Saturday. So I'm giving you that. Zoe's probably going to be mad at me for letting everybody know when the surprise show is, but I'm just telling you the day, not the time. So you still have to check the channel for the time. Everyone hit that like button. Yes. Uh, I don't mind the 9 o'clock Eastern. I don't know. Do you guys like it? I mean, it's fine by me. I don't know that it's made our numbers go up so much, but Paige is very excited. That's good. All right. So tomorrow we'll have a surprise show. Check the community page or the updates on our channel to find out when it is. It won't be till the afternoon. It's not going to be like at 9 a.m. That's not cool. But I will post on the community page when it's going to be. I might just give you like an hour or two, but I will post on there and then we'll have the show sometime after 1 o'clock Eastern. And then we'll have a show, our typical show on Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern. So that's it. Yes, I'll give everybody like at least an hour's heads up on the surprise show when we have it tomorrow. So like if we have the show like at 5 o'clock Eastern, I'll let you know by at least 4 o'clock Eastern, somewhere in that ballpark. So anyway, right around 5 o'clock Eastern time. So, all right, everybody, take care. I'll see you soon. And I'll also let you know more about the fantasy league that we're gonna have. So, thanks a lot. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon.